Hello and welcome yet again to another video on Scribosphere, and today we are finally doing Buffy Season 7 at last, talking about the good, the bad, the ugly, overall what I thought of the season, and overall what I think of the series as it is the last season of Buffy. Now, this format will be staying next year when I start up Supernatural. I will be doing all 15 seasons, the same kind of style, the good, the bad and the ugly of each season. Rewatching, I'm going to start rewatching it at some point this year, just so I'm ready and it's fresh in my mind, so that by the time I get to season 15, it's all up in here and there's no, M's and R's and thinking about what season is which, especially when it comes to seasons, like from season 12 onwards to 14, some of the episodes start to mishmash. There will be nothing like that. Anyway, we are starting with Buffy Season 7 today. The good, the bad and the ugly. And let's start off, as we always do. Actually, I'm going to start off with the bad today. The bad of this season is storyteller. Something that, I don't know whether they just tried to do something with Andrew that was fun and interesting, and it just didn't work in the end. Not going to say much about this. While I do enjoy the episode to a certain extent, I do not think it's a very good Buffy episode. It's one that when me and my dad were watching, that he'll just completely click out. I mean, I'll keep watching it because I love the character of Andrew. However, I don't think it's very much a worthy, episode in the Buffy universe. So, that is why I'm putting Storyteller as the bad of the season. Moving on now, we will go on to the good. And of course the good for me, I've got two episodes listed here. One is Conversations with Dead People. This episode, when it first aired, I didn't really think much of it. But rewatching it, I realised that actually it's a very strong episode. We get Joyce back as well for a moment, which is very nice. With Dawn, not Buffy, which I think makes her it better, because if it's Dawn, then there's sort of more feeling behind it, because obviously Dawn, technically speaking, isn't her real daughter, whereas Buffy is, and I think that's why Joyce feels like she has to talk to Dawn. Now, a lot of people might think that actually this is the first, but I don't actually think that this is the first. This is Joyce. No doubt about it. Later on, Buffy, of course, is sleeping, and she does actually have visions of Joyce later on in the season. But, it's a nice touch. It's also a nice touch to have Buffy sort of talk with somebody that she used to know. If only, it's the same sort of problem that Season 7 had at the start of the season, where none of the three at the start of the season, the three zombies, the three ghouls, or whatever you want to call them, ghosts, none of the three were recognisable, and it's the same for this guy. The only thing that makes this guy recognisable is the fact that he plays Nox in Angel. He's a character in Angel that's quite pivotal to Season 5 of Angel, if you ask me. So, for him to actually appear here does seem a little bit strange. But, nonetheless, it's a good episode. We're going to get on with the trivia. So originally Xander was supposed to talk to the first in the form of Jesse, his buddy from Season 1. However, when Eric was unavailable, which is Eric Balfour who played Jesse in Season 1, that very first episode, those two episodes at the start of the season, the series, replacement for him couldn't be found, so the scene was never filmed, and as a result Xander does not appear, making it the only time that Nicholas Brendan was not featured in an episode of Buffy. So yeah, that's quite interesting actually. I didn't know that going forward with this video, that they were trying to get Jesse back and he couldn't come back. That's unfortunate, because that would have been interesting. Another little tidbit here. Joss Whedon and Martin Oxon are both uncredited writers for this episode. Each writer writing one of the 4 different segments. The Dawn Joyce segment was written by Jane Epsenson. I'm not sure how to say that name. I've always looked at the name and thought, how do you say that? Espenson. That's how it's that's how it's spelt. But anyway, the Andrew, Jonathan and Warren segment was Drew Goddard and Martin Oxon wrote the Willow and Cassie segment, whereas Joss wrote what was Buffy's conversation with Holden. So, different writers, so there was different sort of themes to each conversation. That's quite nice, because usually you get one writer and one director for the whole episode, whereas having multiple writers, I think, gives a little bit more freedom and a little bit more chance for character development in a single episode. So that's quite nice to see. The plot told entirely in real time in between the commercials. So yeah, as it's obvious while watching the episode, there's no breaks, there's no cuts to something else. You know what I mean? It's all done, all in one night, all at the same time. Last one for this episode, and then we'll move on to what the other episode is and why exactly I love this episode. Sarah Michelle Gellar and Alison Anakin are the only two actresses to appear in all 144 episodes, with the exception of the unaired pilot in which Willow was played by Ruth Regan. Okay, so yeah, that's going back to the first initial trivia I gave you, where Nicholas Brendan wasn't in it because they couldn't get Jesse back. So yeah, that's quite interesting. I enjoyed this episode very much. I think this episode does deserve a lot of praise, because it sort of slows it down for a little bit. I mean, it's very early on in the season. I think it's episode 7. I will get that up for you. Or not. Yeah, it's episode 7. It's episode 7 of season 7. So it happens very early on, but I think it just breaks down a little bit, so it gives it a little bit of a breather before we get into the heavy stuff that we get later on, with the potentials, Faith returning, Spike's chip problem, all this and that. I mean, obviously the chip problem starts in this episode with what I'm going to call not Ultanox. The conversation with Ultanox actually, leads on to Buffy finding out that James Masters' Spike has gone bad again. However, he's not gone bad again on his own terms. It's the first messing with his mind, just like it did with Angel back in season 3. Nice little callback there. That's one of the reasons why I love this season as well. It's not just the last season. There's a few little callbacks to the rest of the series, especially when it comes to the first. You get that scene at the start of the series. This is me delving into that talk about everything in this season. But yeah, there's just so much in this series to love, and in this season I think you get that. So we are moving on now to Help. Help is another episode that I absolutely love this series. It's quite a heartbreaking episode. It deals with what is possibly one of the most serious things in Buffy when it comes to real life, and that is suicide, or the thought of somebody taking their own life. And Buffy, Xander and Willow are all trying to help this girl who they think is going to kill herself on Friday. However, it's not. In the end, it can't be helped. She had premonitions. She knew that she was going to die either way, but I think she always had an idea that it was never going to be a maleficent sort of force that was going to kill her. That it was something that was going to be a bit more natural, something that could not be stopped. I absolutely love this episode. We will get to the trivia in a minute, but I absolutely love this episode. I think it's really heartwell, and it's something that you don't normally see in Buffy. It really does tame it down to realism. Something that I think Buffy does perfectly. And I do love Buffy for doing that. So, the trivia for this episode. This is said to feature the first known use on television of the word Google as a verb. When Willow asks, "Have you Googled her yet?" And Xander responds, "She's 17. Yeah, so Google is a thing now. Obviously this is 2002-2003 era. So we were just getting into that modern age with the internet and everything like that. So it's quite interesting to see that that the influences of pop culture comes from Google quite a bit. You know, you do get a lot of lines about Google. In the future of TV shows and movies and stuff like that, it's always mentioned. Even when it's not mentioned, it's actually mentioned by the people that are viewing it. You know, when somebody uses Bing or Yahoo or something, you know, they use a different internet service, maybe one they've created just for the film, just so that because obviously Google is copyrighted. So yeah, it's quite interesting to see that even when that happens, people think, oh, okay, they can't use Google. You know, Google always comes up in everyday life. Willow visits Tara's grave for the first time, and she leaves a small handful of stones on top of the gravestone. There's a Jewish tradition, because Willow is Jewish. That one leaves a small stone or two to the gravestone during every visit to a loved one's grave. This tradition is also visible at the end of another Joss Whedon project, Serenity, in which such stones are visible in the graves at the end of the film. Yeah, so it's a very Jewish thing, something which I don't know nothing about. I'm not religious in any way possible. Don't forget, just my opinion over here anyway. Yeah, so obviously Willow is Jewish. This is a scene that I always forget when rewatching Buffy. I always think, what is this scene? I don't remember this scene at all. From the original watch of Buffy, it's a scene that's completely slipped my mind, and it's a shame because I absolutely love the scene. I think it's very important in the series for this scene to happen. The book Cassie Newton is reading, Slaughterhouse 5, by Kurt Vonnegut. What the hell is that name? Kurt Vonnegut Jr., I think that's how you pronounce it, deals with an alien race who can view the future as they travel through their lives in a non-linear time, but have no free will. Much like Cassie knows that she will, you know, what will happen and cannot change her fate. So yeah, influences by what she's actually reading within the episode. These episodes, you know, maybe they're not the best of Buffy, but they are the best of season 7. I love these episodes, and they mean a lot to a lot of the characters, and I think that's why it's important that these episodes are in the series and in this season in general. Now, we go on to the ugly, and the ugly of this season is Paul Giles. Paul Giles? No, Paul Xander. Xander getting his eye gouged out is not only ugly to watch, but it's also ugly moment as feelings wise. It's horrible to see somebody like, you know, character like Xander gets shit on quite a lot, right? But there are times, like i.e. when he saves Willow or the world, for instance, and there's other times as well which are reminiscent of, you know, a good person within him, you know. While yes, he does have some questionable moments in the series, he's not necessarily a bad guy. He's just written badly, I think, sometimes, unfortunately. Well, I think that this is just like sort of a thing that like fans get divisive about with Xander. But I do think it's very much sad when he gets his eye gouged out. I don't think he deserves it. You know, I think it's a very good moment in the series because it just shows just anything can happen. You know, it being the last season, anything can happen, anyone can die, which is proved by when Spike sacrifices himself. So yeah, another bit of the ugly story is the whole thing with Faith coming into it. Not necessarily Faith coming into it, but Faith's effect on the girls in Dirty Girls. Also, the fact that like they kick out Buffy is another ugly moment. It's something that's been, you know, talked about before in the series, where Buffy has a disagreement with every character, and you know that makes sense. It makes sense that some characters do have issues with other characters. That's how life works. But in this incident, it goes a bit too far, and unfortunately, I just don't like it. I don't like it all that much. But I love season 7. I think season 7 is like, as an overall thing, like the series wraps up really well. It gives you a big gut-punching final fight, something that wasn't needed in Angel because it was the point that the fight always goes on in Angel. Something which a lot of people get wrong. Do you want to like the ending of Angel? Not necessarily, but they're making a point in Angel, and that's why I like it. Also, you get a lot of differences in this series. It's a lot more grown up in this season. I think there's a lot more mature, roles for each character to play. But at the same time, you're dealing with the usual shit of, demons and aliens now. Demons and vampires and zombies and ghouls and all sorts of things in this season. The first, as a villain, is brilliant, although I did think that they actually struggled to sort of figure out exactly what they do with their villain of the series, because he's incorporeal. He's incorporeal at the end of the day. And that's where the Uber Vamps come in, which I do enjoy the Uber Vamps. Spike's death, meaningful, a little bit of it taken away in Angel, the fact that he comes back, but it doesn't dishearten the story. It still means something when Spike dies. The moment between Buffy and Spike is nice as well, where you get like the whole thing where Buffy's like, I love you, and Spike's like, no you don't, but thanks for saying it. It's like, okay, maybe Buffy doesn't love him, but she loves him to a certain extent. It's not deep love like Angel it was, but with Spike it's more of a sensual feeling than, while there was more sexual feeling in the last season, it's more sensual in this season. I quite like that. The whole series in general is brilliant. Not much else to talk about here. I think, could they have done more with this series? Absolutely. They could have gone another 10 years. They could have gone the supernatural route, but then of course you start to get the weak seasons. Like season 4, you'll start getting season 4s during seasons 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You don't want that. You want it to keep its integrity and its strengths as much all the way through. Don't get me wrong, Supernatural, yes, I love Supernatural all the way through. There's nothing about Supernatural I don't love all the way through. But it still has its troubles going through so many seasons and not repeating storylines, which it does quite a bit. It actually repeats storylines a lot earlier than you realise, but it's not something that Buffy would have worked with. This season in general, I give it a 9 out of 10, and the series overall is a 9 out of 10. For me, it's one of the best series to ever hit our TV screens. Something that I think down the line, one day, we'll have shows that maybe might get to the heights of Buffy, but they never get past that Buffy. They can never hit as high as Buffy ever did. I love the series, and there's something else that I love to do with Buffy, and that is the film. I'm one of the very few people that actually enjoy the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie. I'll probably talk about that at some point on my channel down the line. But anyway, that's today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Of course, earlier you did get the Spider-Man trailer review. Next up, you will get an Eternals review, possibly tomorrow. Hopefully you will get some Comic-Con video tomorrow. Sticking MCM Birmingham Comic Con and Wales Comic Con all in one video. I've got my pops all in front of me ready to show you, the ones that I got from Comic Con. And then I will also be showing you what I get from Wales Comic Con as well, with footage of that. I didn't record an awful lot for Comic Con, so unfortunately there is not a lot to show from Birmingham. I am hoping to show a lot more from Wales Comic Con, which is tomorrow for me. So anyway, thanks for watching. I've been Scrivo. This has been Scrivosphere, and goodbye.